It's been a hard year for American Jews. For generations, many of us have been stalwart members of the left, proud of our progressive bona fides and the solidarity that we have extended to those with less power and privilege, both on American soil and globally. American Jews have always had an affinity for the left. As new arrivals here, we were overwhelmingly working class and brought a keen sense of the injustices suffered in the old country into the labor movement. When the left shifted its focus from labor activism to civil rights, the persecution we had escaped and the memories of the Holocaust, just 20 years old when Dr. King marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, made American Jews especially outraged at the injustices against Black Americans whose struggle for equality called upon a wellspring of biblical texts for support and mirrored our own oppression in Europe. Even as the left moved into a more identity-based iteration at the end of the 20th century, progressive American Jews felt that it was our role as people with privilege to stand with the oppressed, be they women or LGBTQ communities or undocumented immigrants. Yet, after Hamas's brutal October 7th massacre of 1,200 innocent Israelis, many were shocked to find that the left no longer had an affinity for American Jews. American Jews felt abandoned by the left, which seemed eager to erase, excuse, whitewash, or even celebrate Hamas's crimes against our brothers and sisters. For many Jews, it was a shocking wake-up call, leaving them feeling politically homeless. I can empathize. It's a process I went through 5 or 6 years ago myself. That's when it became clear to me that the left hadn't just left us, it had left the very values that drew Jews to the left in the first place. And yet, since then, I have come to believe that there is an inheritor of those values, especially the pro-labor approach to the economy. And the case I'd like to make to you today is that the inheritor of that tradition of American Jews is Donald Trump. Now, if you're a progressive Jew and you get your news from the New York Times or MSNBC, you have probably been told that Donald Trump is a white supremacist, that he's an aspiring dictator, a Hitler wannabe, an authoritarian with no respect for the rule of law and endless contempt for our democracy. You may believe that he will implement a federal abortion ban, that he said Jews are to blame if he loses, that there will be a bloodbath if he loses, and that he called neo-Nazis very fine people. And I understand why all of this feels disqualifying, but let's take the example of Trump calling neo-Nazis very fine people. Here's the clip.
And you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
Can you see how the media cropped the clip to give you a false impression by erasing the part where he made clear he wasn't calling Nazis fine people? There are unfortunately many such cases. He promised to veto a national abortion ban. You may not know that. The bloodbath comment was about the auto industry. Here's the clip of Donald Trump saying he'd be a dictator.
We love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator, okay?
Now, beyond the fact that Trump is very obviously making a joke about how he is perceived by Democrats, the extent of being a dictator that Trump is planning for day one, if we were to take him at his word, is to implement totally legal executive orders on the border and on American energy. More importantly, there is a dividing line in our country between those who believe the narrative about Trump being a unique threat and those who believe the opposite, that he is a unique champion for our struggling working class. There is a line dividing those who believe his personality and character should be disqualifying, and those who believe that only a person with such disregard for how he is perceived could have made so many necessary and important changes to the country. There's a line dividing those who feel that 91 indictments mean that surely he's guilty of something, and those who feel that when there are 91 indictments, they will stop at nothing to get him. And that dividing line is the class divide separating Americans with a college degree from Americans without one. We're seeing a historic realignment in American politics. The GOP under Trump's influence has become the party of the working class, increasingly of all races. From 2016 to 2024, Trump has grown his share of Black and Hispanic voters, especially men without a college degree, to historic levels for a Republican. The mark he's made on labor is equally vivid. The Teamsters Union, 1.3 million strong, refused to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris after it became clear that 60% of their rank and file were voting for Trump. This is the case with many labor unions. The Democrats portray themselves as the party of organized labor, and yet the majority of rank and file when it comes to labor unions is in Trump's camp, even as the national leadership continues to endorse the Democratic candidate. Now, we in the laptop class may think that the PRO Act is how you support labor, but it is my view that working people, many of whom are living on a shoestring budget, are the best judges of which president stands for their interests. And when you talk to working class voters, as I did for my book, Second Class, they point to the specific Trump-era policies that put money in their pockets: tariffs, a trade war with China, reshoring manufacturing, and immigration controls, which restricted the supply of labor and resulted in the first wage growth the working class had seen in decades. But as the working class defected to the right, the Democrats began to grow their share of the affluent. And today, Democrats now receive the support of 65% of American households making over $500,000 a year. Democrats are the recipients of 75% of Wall Street donations, and they represent 9 of the 10 richest counties in the country. Harris is absolutely dominating with the college-educated, especially college-educated women. Now, why did this happen? Why did labor abandon the Democratic Party for Trump? Because, as with the Jews, the left abandoned them. Today's progressive movement is less about labor or rights and more focused on identity, equity, and a sense of responsibility to the global oppressed. It's why there has been such attrition from the working class. Successive Democratic presidents abandoned a commitment to labor to enhance the economic prospects of the college-educated and cater to their cultural concerns. It's why today the Democrats support late-term abortions, free trade, and zero-emissions environmental policy, as well as a laxity when it comes to illegal immigration. These are all issues that divide Americans based on class. Meanwhile, it is Trump, ironically enough, who has inherited many of the issues traditionally associated with the left. Economically, his protectionist policies on trade and immigration have more in common with the Democrats historically than free trade Republicans. It was the Democrats, including unions, who historically opposed immigration on the grounds that it hurt workers. Consider this clip of Bernie Sanders, the standard bearer of the left, from as recently as 2015.
Open borders.
Open borders.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. But right-wing people in this country would love as an open border policy. Bring in all kinds of people who work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that.
And yet by 2019, Bernie had joined the rest of the Democrats in promising to decriminalize illegal border crossing. Bernie was right in 2015. Illegal immigration hurts the working class, and a strong border, like Trump had, gives power to workers at the bottom of the wage spectrum, which is exactly what a report found in 2019. Trump's economic policy was closing the wage gap. That year, the bottom 25% of wage earners saw a 4.5% wage increase, but the top 25% only saw a 2.9% increase, meaning that Trump was the first president in 60 years to reduce the income gap. And what about Trump's alleged racism, his offensive comments about black jobs, and his opposition to immigrants? Well, up until Trump ran for office, it was understood on the left that mass migration hurts workers, and black workers most of all. A 2010 study by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights found that the large immigrant inflow from 1980 to 2000 resulted in a labor supply shock that increased the number of workers in the U.S. by 10%, accounting for 40% of the overall 18% decline in black employment rates and 10% increase in the incarceration rate of black high school dropouts. Illegal immigration has a disproportionately negative effect on the wages and employment levels of blacks, Peter Kirsanow told the Senate Subcommittee on Immigration in 2016. The huge number of illegal immigrants ensures that there is a continual surplus of low-skilled labor, preventing wages from rising. He went on, The dearth of job opportunities gives these men less confidence in their ability to support a family and gives women reason to fear that these prospective husbands will only be another mouth to feed. Continuing to have high levels of low-skilled immigration, legal or illegal, will only further harm African American workers. Here's Barbara Jordan, the civil rights icon, on the topic.
If we are to preserve our immigration tradition and our ability to say yes to the people who want to get in and seek entry, we've got to have the strength to say no to the people who are not supposed to get in. We need to make deportation a part of a credible immigration policy. Illegal aliens don't have the right to be here. They broke the law to get here. They never intended to become a part of our social community, and they are not entitled to benefits.
Anyone speaking this way today would immediately be tarred as a racist. It's not just labor and protecting Black wages that makes Trump seem like more of a leftist than the party he's running against. His opposition to foreign wars and U.S. support for them was a cornerstone of the post-war left. Even his position on abortion, that it should be legal for 12 to 16 weeks with exceptions for incest, rape, and the health of the mother always, is closer to the Democrats' position in the 1990s than the post-Roe Democratic consensus that no upper limit at all be imposed on the right to an abortion. Remember safe, legal, and rare? That was the Democrats' position on abortion. Trump is the candidate who believes in creating an economy that protects the wages and the labor of American workers. Trump is the candidate who has a record to show that he can do it. He is the candidate most committed to protecting Black jobs and Black wages from the immense downward pressure of illegal immigration and free trade. And much as it is hard to see through the prism of the headlines inundating us on social media, he isn't a divider so much as the person who united the working class of all races against the elites who unfortunately have contempt for them. Certainly, there is a rising tide of anti-Semitism coming from the fringes of the far right, and I do not want to downplay that. But when the enemies of the Jews make clear their views on the right, they are more often than not marginalized from the mainstream, which is really not something you can say about anti-Semitism on the left. Moreover, I think it's easy enough to see that Trump's commitment to peace in the Middle East, based on the historic record of the Abraham Accords, is something many Jews feel in our bones is in our interests. But that's not the reason to vote for him. The reason to vote for Donald Trump is that he is the candidate who stands most clearly for the things that have defined us as American Jews for centuries. The left didn't just abandon us, it abandoned labor. That's who we should go back to standing with, just as America's working class has and always will stand by us.